Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the video solutions to the convert between fractions and percentages practice questions. If you need any extra help on convert between fractions and percentages, if you go to Corbettmaths and go to the videos and worksheets section and scroll down to video numbers 122 and 126, there's dedicated video tutorials there on converting between fractions and percentages. Alternatively, you could scan this QR code. But in this video, we're going to focus on the video solutions to the practice questions, so let's get started. Okay, question number one. So question number one says, what is 3/4 as a percentage? Now there's some fractions and percentages that you just know off by heart. You should know that a half is equal to, you should know straight away that a half is equal to 50%. So you should know that one off by heart. Also, you should know that a quarter is equal to 25%. That's also another important one to learn off by heart. And then here, 3/4 is equal to 75%. So it's very important to know that 3/4 as a percentage is 75%. And it's just handy if you know those off by heart and you don't actually need to remember how to convert them between each other. But if you did and you wanted to convert 3/4 to a percentage, one approach would be to convert it to a decimal first of all. So to do 3 divided by 4. So 3 divided by 4 using the bus shelter method. So if we do 3 divided by 4, how many 4s going to 3? That's going to be 0 remainder 3. How many 4s going to 30? That'll be 7 remainder 2. And how many 4s going to 20? That's 5. So 3/4 is 0.75. And then if you times that by 100, you get 75. So that'll be 75%. So that's one way you could change 3/4 to a percentage. But again, I would just say it's useful to learn it off by heart. Okay, our next one, question number 2, says what is 25% as a fraction? So 25% as a fraction is a quarter. And think about it, if 50% is equal to a half, then 25% would be equal to a quarter. So the answer is a quarter, and that's it. Okay, our next one, question number 3. So question number 3 says to write 19% as a fraction. So percent means out of 100, so 19% would be 19 out of 100. And that would be 19 hundredths. And then in terms of that fraction, we can't cancel it down, so that's it. Our answer would just be 19 hundredths. So 19% as a fraction is 19 over 100, or 19 hundredths. Okay, let's have a look at our next one, question number 4. So question number 4 says to write 30% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. Now again, this one might be quite useful to learn off by heart, and knowing that a tenth is equal to 10%. Thinking about it, a tenth of 100 is 10%. 2 tenths, or 1/5, is equal to 1/5, would be equal to 20%. So if you have 2 tenths, which is the same as 1/5, that's 20%. And if you've got 30%, well, that's going to be 3 tenths. 3 tenths would be 3 tenths of 100 is equal to 30, so that'd be 30%. So 3 tenths is 30%. So it's quite useful to know off by heart that 30% is equal to 3 tenths straight away. And that's it. So that's our answer in its simplest form. Alternatively, we've got 30%. That means 30 out of 100, so that means 30 out of 100. And then we could just cancel it down. Dividing both of those by 10 would be 3 tenths. So 30% as a fraction is 3 tenths. And that's it. Okay, next, question number 5. Question number 5 says write 73 out of 100 as a percentage. Now this one's quite nice. This is already out of 100. It's 73 out of 100. So this would be 73%. So to change a fraction to a percentage, you can do the numerator divided by the denominator. In this case, that would be 0.73. And then times by 100, so that would be 73. And then we'd write with 73%. Or alternatively, you could make the denominator 100. And in this case, it's already 100. So it's just 73 out of 100. So that's 73%. So if you can sometimes find equivalent fractions with 100 on the denominator, that could be quite useful as well. Okay, our next question, question number 6. So question number 6 says to write 13/50ths as a percentage. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to find that equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator. So this is 13 out of 50. So we're going to write 13/50ths. And we want to get a fraction with 100 on the denominator, because we can do that quite nicely. We can just multiply by 2. If we multiply the denominator by 2, we can then just multiply the numerator by 2. And 13 times 2 is 26. So that's 26 out of 100. And then that would just be 26%. So we've just found an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator. Alternatively, we could do 13 divided by 50 using our bus shelter method and say, well, how many 50s are in 1? 0 remainder 1. How many 50s are in 13? 0 remainder 13. How many 50s are in 130? That'll be 2, that's 100, remainder 30. And then how many 50s are in 300? That'll be 6. So that's 0.26, so 0.26 is a decimal. And then if you times that by 100, you get 26. So then it would be 26%, and that's it. Okay, our next question, question number 7. So question number 7 says to write 9/10 as a percentage. So again, this is a useful one to learn off by heart, that 9/10 would be 90%, because 1/10 is 10%, 2/10 is 20%, 3/10 is 30%, so 9/10 is equal to 90%, and just knowing that off by heart. Or even doing 9/10 of 100. So taking 100, dividing it by 10, that's 10%, and then times it by 9 would be 90%. Alternatively, we've got 9/10 here. We could write that as an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator, so we can times the denominator by 10 to get 100, and then if you times the denominator by 10, you could multiply the numerator by 10, and 9 times 10 is equal to 90. So that's 90 out of 100, or 90%. Okay, question number 8. So question number 8 says to write 4/5 as a percentage. So again, we've got 4/5. So we could do 4 divided by 5, which is equal to 0.8, and then that would be 80%. Or you could learn it, the 4/5 is equal to 80%, because 1/5 is 20%, so 4/5 is 80%, so I know that one off by heart. Alternatively, we could then find a fraction with 100 on the denominator, so an equivalent fraction. So we could times the denominator by, what would you times 5 by to get 100? That'd be 20. So we can times the numerator by 20, and 4 times 20 is equal to 80. So that's 80 out of 100, or 80%. And that's it. Now in this question, actually, I would actually just learn off by heart that 1/5 is 20%, so 4/5 is equal to 80%, and you can do 4/5 of 100, that's equal to 80 as well. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 9. So question number 9, we've been asked to complete this table, and we've got fraction and percentage. So a half, well, that's going to be 50%, that's really easy, a half. Okay, for 75%, that's equal to 3/4. Again, that's another one that you should just learn off by heart. 20%, we talked about that earlier, that 20% is equal to a fifth. I'm thinking about it, 20 out of 100, you could cancel it down to be 2/10 by dividing both of those by 10, and you could divide by 2 again, that'll be 1/5, so that's equal to 1/5. So again, it's quite useful to learn that 20% is a fifth. And then 2/5, so that'll be double 1/5. Because 2/5 is double 1/5. So if 1/5 is 20%, 2/5 would be 40%, and then that would be that one, 40%. And again, if we didn't know that, we could write 2/5, and we could get an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator. So to get from 5 to 100, we times by 20. And then in terms of the numerator, you times by 20 as well. And 2 times 20 is equal to 40. So that's 40 out of 100, or 40%. Alternatively, we could take the numerator, which is 2, and then divide that by 5. I'm going to put a decimal point in some zeros because we know that it's going to be a decimal number. How many 5s go into 2? That's going to be 0 remainder 2. And how many 5s go into 20? That's 4. So 2/5 is equal to 0.4. And then whenever you times 0.4 by 100, you get that's equal to 40. So the answer would be 40%. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 10. Okay, question number 10 says to write 17 over 20, or 17/20 as a percentage. Now this one's quite nice again because we've got 20 on the denominator, and we can get from 20 to 100 quite nicely by just timesing by 5. If we times 20 by 5, we get 100 on the denominator, and then we could just times the numerator by 5. So let's do 17 multiplied by 5. So 5 times 7 is 35, put the 5 down, carry the 3. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So it's going to be 85 out of 100, or 85%. And that's it. So 17/20 is 85%. Alternatively, we could have taken the numerator, which is 17, and divide that by 20. I'm just going to put a decimal point and some zeros. How many 20s go into 1? 0, remainder 1. How many 20s go into 17? 0, remainder 17. How many 20s go into 170? That'll be 8 is 160, remainder 10. And how many 20s go into 100? That's going to be 5. So it's going to be 0.85. And when you times that by 100, you get 85. So the answer will be 85%. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 11. Okay, so question number 11 says to write 15% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So this is 15%, so that's 15 out of 100. And now we just need to cancel it down. So both of these numbers are divisible by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. And 100 divided by 5 is 20. So that's going to be 3/20. So that means that 15% is 3/20. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 12. So question number 12 says to write 68% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So it's 68%, so 68 out of 100. They're both even, so let's divide by 2. So that's going to be 34 out of 50. And that's going to be 34 out of 50, dividing both of these by 2. And we could divide by 2 again, that's going to be 17 over 25, or 17/25. So the answer would be 17/25. And that's it. So 68% as a fraction is 17/25. Okay, next question, question number 13. So question number 13 says to write 6% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So 6%, that's 6 out of 100. We can divide both of these by 2, that'll be 3/50. And then that's it, 3/50. So the answer is 3/50. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 14. Okay, so question number 14 says to write 7/10 as a percentage. So again, this is one that I would just learn off by heart, that 7/10 is 70%, because 1/10 is 10%, so 7/10 is 70%. So that's one that I would learn off by heart. But again, we could write it as a fraction, 7/10, and then find an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator. To get from 10 to 100, we times by 10. So we could times the numerator by 10, and that means that 7 times 10 is 70. So that's 70 out of 100, which would be 70%. Alternatively, we could take the numerator, the 7, and divide that by the denominator to get it as a decimal. So how many 10s go into 7? 0 remainder 7. How many 10s go into 70? That's 7. That's 0.7. And then you can times that by 100, which would be 70. So answer would be 70%. Okay, next, question number 15. So question number 15 says to write 12/25 as a percentage. And again, this is quite nice because if you have 12/25, you can get to a fraction with an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator quite nicely. We could just times by 4 because 25 times 4 is 100. So that means that if you times the numerator by 4, 12 times 4 is equal to 48. So it's 48 out of 100, which is 48%. And then also remember, we could take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. So we could take 12 and divide it by 25. I'm going to put a decimal point, some zeros. How many 25s go into 1? 0 remainder 1. How many 25s go into 12? 0 remainder 12. How many 25s go into 120? Well, if we write our multiples of 25, that's going to be 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, so 4 of them is 100, so 4 remainder 20, and then it says how many 25s go into 200, so that's going to be 150, 175, 200, so it's going to be 8, so it's going to be 0.48, so that means that 12/25 is 0.48, but we want that as a percentage, so we're going to do 0.48 times 100, that's equal to 48, so our answer would be 48%, and that's it, so that's equal to 48, so it's 48% is our answer. Okay, question number 16. So question number 16 says to write 72% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So 72% will be 72 out of 100. We're going to divide both of these by 2. That's going to be 36 out of 50. We could divide this by 2 again to get that's equal to 18 over 25. And then that's it. That's 18/25. So that's our answer, 18/25. So 72% as a fraction in its simplest form is 18/25. Okay, question number 17. So question number 17 says to use one of the symbols, either less than, equal to, or greater than, to make this statement true. So we've got 13/20 and then something 64%. So let's change our 13/20 into a percentage. So 13/20, we could get an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator quite nicely. We could just times by 5 because 20 times 5 is 100. So if we do 13 times 5, that'll tell us what goes on the numerator. So 13 multiplied by 5. So 5 times 3 is equal to 15. Put a 5 down, carry over 1. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So it's going to be 65 out of 100 or 65%. So this is 65%. So we now need to decide if 65% is going to be less than, equal to, or bigger than 64%. Well, it's not equal to, it's not going to be less than, it's going to be bigger than. 65% is bigger than 64%, or 13/20 is bigger than 64%, and that's it. Now here we could have, instead of writing an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator, we could have divided our 13 by 20, so we could have done 13 divided by 20, put a decimal point and some zeros. How many 20s go into 1? 0 remainder 1. How many 20s go into 13? That's going to be 0 remainder 13. How many 13s go into 130? That's going to be 6 remainder 10. And then how many 20s go into 100? That's 5. So that's 0.65. And then when you times by 100, that's 65%. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 18. So question number 18, we've got this grid, and it's a rectangular grid with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 little rectangles. And part A says what fraction of the grid is shaded, and to give our answer in its simplest form. So we've got 10 little squares or rectangles there, and how many are shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 out of the 10 are shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6/10 of that grid is shaded. We can cancel that down. That would be, dividing both of these by 2 would be 3/5. So that means that 3/5 of that grid is shaded. Okay, and then part B. Part B says to write our answer to A as a percentage. So we need to write 3/5 as a percentage. So 3/5 as a percentage. Well, again, you could know it. The 1/5 is 20%. So 3/5 would be 60%. I would just know that off by heart. The 3/5 is 60%. Alternatively, we could get an equivalent fraction with 100 on the denominator. To get from 5 to 100, we times by 20. So we need to times the numerator by 20. And 3 times 20 is 60. So 60 out of 100 or 60%. Or alternatively, we could take the numerator 3, we could divide that by 5, and then we would get, for how many 5s go to 3? 0 remainder 3. How many 5s go to 30? That's going to be 6, so that's 0.6, and when you times it by 100, that'll be 60, so it's going to be 60%. So what fraction of the grid is shaded? 3/5, and then as a percentage, that's 60%. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 19. So question number 19 says match up the percentages and the fractions. So we've got the fractions and we've got the percentages, and we need to match them up. And we've got the 2/3 is equal to 66 and 2/3%, or 66.66666, and so on. So that one's been done for us. Now 3/4, we know that one's equal to 75% straight away off by heart, just that 3/4 is 75%. Now, the 4/5, well, 1/5 is 20%, so 4/5 would be 80%. That one's quite nice. Actually, we could just do here just to show you that 4/5, if we times the denominator by 20, that'll be 100. And if we times the numerator by 20, then that would be 80. So that's 80 out of 100, or 80%. And then finally, that must mean that 17/20 is 85%. And again, let's just check that. 17/20, if you times both the numerator and denominators by 5, you would get on the denominator 100. And 17 times 5 is 85, so that's 85%. Alternatively, we could have taken the 17, divided it by 20, and when you do that division, you're going to get that's equal to 0.85, which is again would be then 85%. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 20. Okay, so question number 20 says to write 37.5% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So we want to write 37.5% as a fraction and its simplest form. It has a calculator question, so that's quite nice. Now, in terms of writing a percentage as a fraction, I would just type into my calculator 37.5 over 100. So I would use the fraction button. I would then type in on the numerator 37.5, and then on the denominator just type in 100, and that's equal to, when you press equals, you get that's equal to 3/8. So the calculator would just simplify that for you and just tell you the answer is 3/8. So I just press the fraction button and type that in on my calculator and press equals. Alternatively, you could have written, because it means out of 100, that's 37.5 out of 100. You could then multiply both of those by 10 to get 375 out of 1,000, getting rid of that decimal point, and then you could divide by 5 and so on and use your calculator to help you. But having a decent calculator and being able to use the fraction button and type 37.5 over 100 and press equals is just a bit easier, and that's what I would do. Okay, question number 21. So question number 21 says to write 9/40 as a percentage. Now here, this fraction it's not as easy as some of the ones we've done so far, because so far we've been able to, with all the denominators, just go straight from the denominator to 100 by just multiplying by one number. So with a question like number 21, if I had a question like this, what I would actually do is just take the numerator and divide it by the denominator straight away to write it as a decimal, and then change that decimal into a percentage. So I would do 9 divided by 40. If it was a calculator question, I'd type that into my calculator. Alternatively, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do 9 and then the bus shelter method and then 40. Decimal point, some zeros. So how many 40s go into 9? 0 remainder 9. How many 40s go into 90? Well, the multiples of 40 are 40, 80, so that's going to be 2, remainder 10. Okay, next we've got how many 40s go into 100. Well, it's going to again be 40, 80, and then it's 120, so it's not 120, so it's going to be 80, that's going to be 2. We've got another remainder, so let's put another 0. So 2 40s is 80, so remainder is 20. And then how many 40s go into 200? That's going to be 5, so it's going to be 0.225. So 9/40 as a decimal is 0.225, and then if you do 0.225, so 0.225 times 100, that's equal to 22.5, just moving those digits 2 columns to the left. So that's 22.5, so answer is 22.5%. So 9/40 as a percentage is equal to 22.5%, and that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 22. Okay, so question number 22 says to write 7/8 as a percentage. So we're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So we're going to do 7 divided by 8. So I'm going to do a decimal point and some zeros. I'm not sure how many I'm going to need, so we've just done 3 there. So how many 8s go into 7? 0 remainder 7. How many 8s go into 70? Well, 8 times 8 is 64. So it's going to be equal to 8. And then that 64 remainder is 6. Then how many 8s go into 60? Well, 8 times 7 is 56, so that's going to be 7. So that's 56, remainder 4. And then how many 8s go into 40? That's going to be 5. So that's going to be equal to 7/8 as a decimal is equal to 0.875. Now let's change that decimal into a percentage. So 0.875 times 100 would be equal to, moving the digits 2 columns to the left, would be 87.5. And that means our answer is 87.5%. And that's it. So 7/8 as a percentage is equal to 87.5%. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 23. So question number 23 says, arrange the following numbers in order from smallest to largest. So I'm going to change all of these into percentages. So actually, some of them will be done for us, but I'm going to change the ones we've got as fractions. I'm going to write them as percentages. So 3/10, well, 3/10 is 30%. We should know that one off by heart. The 1/10 is 10%, so 3/10 is 30%. 1/3 is equal to 33.33 and so on percent. Again, that's a very important one to learn. The 1/3 is equal to 33.33333 and so on percent. Or you could write it as 33.1/3%, depending how you want to write it. I tend to write it as 33.33 and then a few dots, so it just recurs. You might even see it as 33.3 with a dot above it percent, and they'll just mean 33.33333 and so on. And then 6/25. Let's write 6/25 as a percentage. So 6 over 25. That's really nice because 25 you can get to 100 quite nicely. You can just times by 4. So you can just times by 4 and times by 4. And 6 times 4 is equal to 24. So that's 24 out of 100 or 24%. And that's fantastic. We've now converted our fractions into percentages. So we've got 30%, 29%, 34.5%, 33.1/3% or 33.333 and so on, and 24%. So this is our smallest. So I'm going to write it as 6/25, what we were given in the question. So we've done that one. Okay, next 29%, that's our next one. Okay, next then we've got 30%, which is 3/10. So that's that one. Okay, we've got two more. So now it's going to be our next one, 33.1/3. So that's going to be, I'm going to write it as a third because that's what we're given in the question. And then finally 34.5, so it's 34.5%. And that's it. We've written those numbers in order, going from the smallest to the largest. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 24. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 24. So question number 24 says, Mark says that 78% is the same as 7/8, and we've been asked to explain why Mark is incorrect. So what I'm going to do in this question is I'm going to write our 7/8 as a percentage. So I'm going to convert it to a decimal and then a percentage using my calculator to help me. So I'm going to do 7 divided by 8 to write it as a decimal, and 7 divided by 8 is equal to 0.875. So that means if you times that by 100, 0.875, that's equal to, if you times that by 100, so times by 100, you get that's equal to 87.5. So that means that 7/8, so 7/8 is equal to 87.5%. So we've been asked to explain why Mark is incorrect. Let's explain that. And that's it. I've just explained that as 7/8 is equal to 87.5%, it is not equal to 78%. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 25. So question number 25 says, over a season, a football team won 53% of their matches and they drew 32% of the matches, and part A says what percentage of the matches were lost. So we want to work out what percentage of the matches were lost. So in terms of the football team, they can either win, draw or lose the matches. There's no other possible outcomes. So it means that these percentages will need to add together to be 100. So let's add together these numbers. Let's do 53 plus 32, and 3 plus 2 is equal to 5, and 5 plus 3 is equal to 8. So if we add together 53% and 32%, that's 85%. So that means that they win or draw 85% of their matches. And then if we do 100, take away 85, that's equal to 15. So that means that they lose 15% of their matches. So what percentage of the matches were lost? That's 15%. And then part B says work out the fraction of games that were lost and to give our answer in its simplest form. So that's 15%. We need to write that as a fraction. So it's going to be 15 out of 100. And then if you divide both of these by 5, you're going to get that's equal to, dividing the numerator by 5 is 3, and dividing the denominator by 5 is 20. So that's 3/20. So that means that the team lost 3/20 of the matches. And that's in the simplest form. We can't simplify that any further. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 26. So question number 26 says, circle the percentage that is closest in value to 2/3. So 2/3 is equal to, and again, you should know this off by heart, that's equal to 66.6666 and so on percent, or 66 2/3%, or 66.6 with a little dot above it because that means recurring percent. Any of those is fine. So that's what 2/3 is as a percentage. And that's a calculator question. If you've forgotten that, you could do 2 divided by 3 is equal to 0.66666 and so on. And then you could times by 100, and that would be 66.66666 and so on percent. Now we need to circle the percentage that is closest in value to that. So it's not going to be 60%, it's not going to be 70%. So we've got a choice of really 66 or 67%. Now this is 66.6666. Now in the middle of these two would be 66.5%. So 66.666 and so on. That'll be closer to 67% than it will be to 66%. So it's going to be 67%. This percentage is closer to 67% rather than 66%. And that's it. Okay, let's look at our next question. Okay, so let's have a look at our next question, question number 27. So question number 27 says that 18% of the cars in a car park are red, and that a fifth of the cars in the same car park are white. And Jessica says there are more white cars than red cars in the car park. And the question says, is Jessica correct? And explain our answer. Okay, so here we've got 18% of the cars are red and a fifth of the cars are white. So it'd be quite useful if we could convert this fraction, 1/5, into a percentage. And actually it's one of the ones that you should really know off by heart, that a fifth is equal to 20%. So a fifth is 20%. Alternatively, remember we could take our 1 and divide that by 5. And if we divide 1 by 5, we get how many 5s go into 1? 0, remainder 1. And how many 5s go into 10? That's 2. So that's 0.2. And if you times that by 100, you get 20. So that'll be 20%. So that means that 20% of the cars in the car park are white and 18% of the cars in the car park are red. So you can see there's more white cars in the car park than red cars in the car park. So Jessica said there was more white than red cars in the car park. Is she correct? Yes. So let's explain that. And that's how I've just explained that as 20% of the cars in the car park are white and only 18% of the cars in the car park are red, she is correct. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 28. Okay, so let's have a look at our next question, question number 28. So question number 28, it's a calculator question, and part A says to write 54.2% as a fraction, and to give our answer in its simplest form. Okay, so this is 54.2%, so that's 54.2 out of 100. So I'm just going to type this into my calculator. So I'm going to press the fraction button, I'm going to type in 54.2, and then type in 100 on the denominator, and that gives me an answer of 271 over 500, and that's it, so 271 500ths. Alternatively, if we had this and we wanted to write this as a fraction in the simplest form, we could multiply both these numbers by 10 to begin with, and that'll give us 542 over 1,000. Then we could take this and we could divide both of these by 2 to get that's equal to 271 over 500, and that's it. So to write 54.2% as a fraction, we could just type it into our calculator, 54.2 over 100, and press equals, and it gives us our answer. Okay, part B. Part B says to write 0.48% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So again, we know that it's 0.48 out of 100. So we can just type this into our calculator. So we can press the fraction button, type 0.48 on the numerator and 100 on the denominator, and press equals, and it tells us that's equal to 3 over 625. So that's 3 625ths, and that's it. Alternatively, we could look at this 0.48 and we could write it as 0.48 out of 100. Then we could multiply both these numbers by 100 to get it's equal to 48 over 10,000, and then we could cancel that down using the calculator to help us, because they're both divisible by 2 and so on, and you just keep dividing, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 29. Okay, so question number 29 is a calculator question, and we need to write 4/11ths as a percentage. So 4/11ths, I'm just going to do 4 divided by 11 on my calculator. I'm just going to do 4 divided by 11, and if I do 4 divided by 11, that's equal to 4/11ths, and then we could change the format, and that would give you that's equal to 0.363636, and so on. Or the calculator may display it as 0.36 with a dot above the 3 and a dot above the 6, and that just means 0.36363636, and so on. And that's it. So that's it as a decimal. We want it as a percentage. So we're going to times this number by 100. So that'll be 36.363636, and so on. And that's it. So I'm just going to write the answer as 36.3636 and a couple of dots. So just say that's our answer, 36.363636, and so on percent. You could, if you wanted to, round this. Now the question didn't say to give it to 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places and so on, but you could round that if you wanted to and say what you've rounded it to. But I would definitely write down the 36.363636 and so on, just to show that's what it is in full, and then obviously if you round it, then to round it. Okay, let's look at our next question, question number 30. Okay, question number 30 says to write 15/16ths as a percentage. So you can then type in 15/16ths on the calculator, press equals, and then just change the format of it to a decimal, and then that'd be 0.9375. Now that's a decimal. We'll times that by 100, so move the digits 2 columns to the left. That'll be 93.75, and then we'd write that as a percentage, 93.75%, and that's our answer. So answer would be 93.75%. Okay, next, 9/55ths. So again, we can press the fraction button, type 9 on the numerator, 55 on the denominator, and then just press equals. And then again, it comes up as a fraction. You can then just convert that, and it could come up either as 0.163 with a dot above the 6 and a dot above the 3, like so, or it might be shown as 0.163636, and so on. So that's it as a decimal, 0.163636363, and so on forever. Now we just then need to multiply that by 100 to get that's equal to, if we times this by 100, we get 16. 16.363636 and so on. And we could write it as 16.3636 and so on. And if you wanted to, you could round it and so on. The question didn't ask us to, so I would just leave my answer like that, 16.3636 and so on percent. Okay, next, question number 31. So question number 31 says to write 40.5% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So this is a percent, so it means out of 100, so that's 40.5 out of 100. Now at this point we could just double both of these, or we could times both of them by 10 and so on. I'm just going to type into my calculator, it's a calculator question, and if we do 40.5 over 100 and press equals, we get that's equal to 81 over 200. That's what we get if we double them to make that a whole number on the numerator. So the answer would be 81 200ths, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 32. So question number 32 says to write 180% as a fraction and to give our answer in its simplest form. So this is 180 out of 100 because it's percent means out of 100, so that's 180 out of 100. And then we could just cancel this down. If we divide both of them by 10, we'll get 18 tenths. And we can divide by 2 to get that's equal to 9/5. So the answer is just 9/5. And again, you could just type that into your calculator and type 180 over 100, and then that gives you an answer of 9/5. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 33. So question number 33 says, write 37 quarters as a percentage. So I'm just going to type this into my calculator, 37 on the numerator and 4 in the denominator, and then get it to display as a decimal, and that would be equal to 37 quarters is equal to 9.25. Now we want this as a percentage, so we're going to times that by 100, so that'll be 925. So that means that'll be, our answer would be 925%, and that's it. Okay, and let's have a look at our last question, question number 34. Okay, so let's have a look at our last question, question number 34. So question number 34 says, as part of a course, students sit 2 assessments. So they sit assessment 1, which is out of 35 marks, and assessment 2, which is out of 125 marks. And then the 2 scores that they get are added together to give them their final score. And then to pass the course, the final score needs to be at least 80%. So they need at least 80% of the total available marks. And Kaylee has scored 13 in assessment 1. So she scored 13 marks in assessment 1. And the question is, what is the lowest percentage that Kaylee needs to score in assessment 2 in order to pass the course? Okay, so to begin with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out how many marks are all together. So I'm going to do 35 plus 125. And it's a calculator question, so you can add those together, and that's equal to 160. So there's 160 marks all together. So there's 160 marks all together. Now, in order to pass, they need to score at least 80%. So we need to work out what 80% of 160 is to see how many marks Kaylee needs in total to pass. So let's work out 80% of 160. And to do that, it's a calculator question, so what we can do is we can take the 160, we can divide it by 100 to find 1%, so that's equal to 1.6, so that's 1%, and then we're just going to times that by 80, so 1.6 times 80 is equal to, if we do 1.6 times 80, that's equal to 128. So that means that for someone to pass this course, they need to score at least 128 marks. So whenever you add together their scores, or the number of marks in assessment 1 and assessment 2, the grand total needs to be at least 128 marks. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take away how many marks Kaylee scored in assessment 1, because if we do 128 take away 13, that's equal to 115 marks. So that's how many marks Kaylee needs to score in assessment 2, because she scored 13 in assessment 1, so she needs to score at least 115 marks in assessment 2 to make sure she passes the course and get the 128 that she needs to pass. Now that's 115 marks. Now the assessment 2 is out of 125, and we've been asked what is the lowest percentage Kaylee needs to score in assessment 2 in order to pass the course. So she needs to score 115 out of the 125. That's the lowest possible number of marks she could get. So it's 115 out of 125. So that's our fraction. We then want to write that as a percentage. And then when we've done that, we figured out what score she needs to get in that final assessment, a minimum score. So let's change this to 115 125ths into a percentage. So we're going to take we'll have that into our calculator, 115 over 125, and as a decimal number, that's equal to 0.92. And then if we times that by 100, 0.92 times 100, that's 92. So that'll be 92%. So that means that Kaylee needs to score at least 92% in assessment 2. Because if she scores 92% in assessment 2, then that means she'd get 115 marks. And when we add that together with the 13 she's already got, that'll give us 128. So what was the lowest percentage Kaylee needs to score in assessment 2 in order to pass the course? She needs to score at least 92%. And that's it. And that's it. So these have been the video solutions to the convert between fractions and percentages practice questions. I really hope you found this video useful. If you have found it useful, please like it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you need any extra help on converting between fractions and percentages, if you go to Corbettmaths and go to the videos and worksheets section and scroll down to videos numbers 122 and 126, they'll be useful for you. But again, I really hope you found this video useful, and thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.